Hi, friends. Welcome back to the program. My name is Dean, and we are here thanks to our friends at Field Trip Health. Go to fieldtriphealth.ca for more details on how you can incorporate ketamine-assisted psychotherapy. Yes, psychedelic-assisted therapy into your wellness routine. Fieldtriphealth.ca operates in Canada, legally, medically supervised therapy with ketamine that helps pull you out of that dark cloud so you can actually talk and do some of the work. Listen, it has helped dozens of my friends. They will help you. They have helped me. And not only do they help you, you help yourself. That's the whole idea behind ketamine assisted therapy. Psychedelic assisted therapy, it takes you out of that mindset where you can't look at the trauma that you've been through, and unwrapping trauma requires therapy, not drugs, therapy. So incorporating ketamine, incorporating therapy into your life helps you take that cage off of treatment resistant depression. There's so many different people that struggle from it. I am no different. You are no different. We're all the same. And so you can take control of your wellness, take control of your emotional health, your mental health by giving my friends at fieldtriphealth.ca a quick call or go on their website. You can get your confidential appointment right there on their website. You can take a little quiz and then they'll get a hold of you and then see if you're a candidate for it, because I am. I know many people are, and you might be too. If you're tired and done struggling with mental health issues like treatment resistant depression, PTSD, anxiety, etc., for OCD as well, there's only one place to go. If you're in Canada, fieldtriphealth.ca. They have at-home therapy available now, which means yes, you can do your therapy at home. You can do the ketamine at home, and you can get better faster. So please check them out today, fieldtriphealth.ca, for more details. It's been a minute. It's been a while since we've had this gentleman on. I took a break from podcasting. I think he had to work. So I think that's what he's been doing. And he was one of our first podcast guests, I would say 3 years ago. And it was right after the Ukraine war started. Ukraine war, the Russian invasion of Ukraine, the illegal invasion of Ukraine. And we got a phone call from somebody that said, "Hey, listen, I know this gentleman that would like to talk about what is going on in Ukraine," because they had just attacked. Russia just attacked Ukraine. And so they put me in touch with this gentleman, and we formed a fast friendship and had him on the podcast weekly for about a year. And then, like I said, then he had to go to work. But he's been working tirelessly, not only helping feed men, women on the front lines in Ukraine that are trying to push back against the genocide of their people. He's been documenting international criminal court cases, thousands of them, trying to repair his country and the people in it from the ongoing invasion of Vladimir Putin and the Russian army that is still ongoing. And of course, we all know what's gone on over the past several weeks since Trump has been inaugurated. Big heel turn to Russia, the dressing down of Zelensky in the Oval Office, stopping aid yesterday, including all ammunition, stopping intelligence sharing with Ukraine. That happened yesterday. And the scene in Ukraine is different. And the feeling around Ukraine is different. And the feeling here in Canada is different because of Donald Trump. So without further ado, please welcome back to the program someone who I happen to know and love, live from Ukraine. He might be in Kyiv. I don't know where he is. Let's find out. Mr. Alex Daybrakov, ladies and gentlemen. Nice to see you. How are you?
Hey, Dean. Thanks for having me again.
Oh, dude, it's so nice to see you. Where are you? Did you move? Are you in a different area? Because I don't recognize the background.
Yeah, actually, it's in BUCHA, which 3 years ago was occupied in the first month of the invasion.
Yeah.
And that was widely spread in the world news as a place where hundreds of people were killed, murdered. So I'm now living here.
Did you just move back to Bucha? Because I know you were in Irpin for a while, which wasn't far, right?
Yeah, it was a neighboring city, and I moved here about 6 months ago. And so the place where I am now, it was under attacks. The helicopters were flying over our roofs, and the tanks were going, and they were burnt, and the artillery was everywhere, and they were shooting. This place was occupied. So Irpin, where we talked to, we talked last time, was not occupied, but this place was under occupation. Yeah, so lots of things were happening here. I'm so happy that it's peaceful here.
Mm.
No.
The building you were in was occupied?
Well, they passed. They passed it. It wasn't even ready for leaving at that point.
Yeah.
But the walls were cracked because of the, what is it, shock wave, the explosion wave. So we had to repair that. But other than that, it was fine, luckily. But there was neighboring houses that were completely burned and are being restored now, renovated. Yeah.
Wow, dude. Yeah, you talk about it like it was a long time ago, but it was only 3 years ago, right?
Exactly. Yeah, yeah. And I just remembered, and let me show you if you can see this.
Yeah.
It's
Uh,
this man, my neighbor from Irpin. His name is Denis,
mhm.
and today is exactly 3 years ago that Denis and his family were trying to evacuate from Irpin
Mm,
on their civil car. He was driving the car, and they shoot him. They shot him right through the windshield. There were 4 holes, so they were actually shooting to kill him. Just a civilian guy. He's my neighbor. I knew him. This was the first case when I actually understood that this war is real. That a man I knew. We were not friends. We were arguing at times, but we were like close neighbors. And he was killed just all of a sudden. For what? I mean, that
mm.
was exactly 3 years ago. This day, today.
Yeah, that was because it was a month, right? Like they attacked in early February, if I'm not mistaken. And then
Uh, yeah, February, March. Yeah.
February, March. Okay, I mean, it's fresh. You're now back in that place, and I remember the story. Like I remember you telling me about that guy who tried to flee the building and the complex area that you were in Irpin, if I'm not mistaken, right?
Exactly. Here
And
is his car that was
yeah,
shot. Yeah,
yeah.
so it was found later, but yeah, he was dead.
Well,
Yeah.
so it's got to be eerie being back in BUCHA. Because like I watched a TV show or actually a movie on what happened in BUCHA and Irpin. There's a really great special on Apple that I watched that my friend Kalen Robertson put together with his friends at Byline Times. And the fact that you're living there, knowing that I watched that show and seeing really a full scale invasion and the genocide of civilians, hundreds, thousands of people, blows my mind. And it blows my mind because the war's still ongoing. Like it must, is it weird being back in Bucha?
Actually, that is something I think every once in a while. I think about every once in a while because if you didn't know what happened here, you would not even believe in that. Because if you walk in the streets, there are shopping malls, grocery stores, car shops, car washes. Everything is working, and coffee shops, restaurants. And you would not even imagine that things like this happened here, and only our memories make it. If you ever come, I hope you at some point you will come visit here, and I will show you those places. You would go like, this doesn't look like there was a war here ever.
Mm,
In fact, some of the places are completely renovated. Warren Buffett's son,
mm,
this American billionaire, he invested a lot into restoring some places in Bucha. We even have a square in Bucha that is called Buffett Square, as a gratitude to him for donating lots of money to restoring the streets, the pavements, the roads, the buildings. Did a lot of things.
mm, I didn't know that. Yeah, it's strange, but it's also really encouraging, and again speaks to the spirit of the Ukrainian people is that 3 years after where you're sitting right now is invaded and occupied by Russian troops, that you are not only back there but you have rebuilt and life is back and the war still rages to the point where now we're seeing a real shift. And so I can't imagine, and I kind of want to understand it from your perspective, Alex. Alex Daybrakov joins us. He's been a frequent podcast guest. He is in BUCHA, Ukraine right now. But the turn that we've seen, so close, what appears to be close to some kind of finish line, knowing Russia was on its hind legs, the economy's collapsing, they're using donkeys on the front lines. God, I love those videos, by the way. Them humping gear with donkeys. It's the best. But what is the mood like, if you can, maybe from your perspective, over the shift in the past month since Donald Trump has kind of taken office?
Yeah, that is. Well, you started this show with speaking about mental health and depression, the state of depression, and I was thinking this is exactly what we are experiencing now. I read somewhere that at least half of Ukrainians are in a state of deep depression since the invasion started, but the last few months have been really exhausting, and especially the last week since Friday, since the scandal in the White House. I mean, I was like, I couldn't sleep at night. I was like, I couldn't think about anything. I was just like, what are we gonna do? I mean, we even have this discussion over dinner with my wife, and it is like a flashback from 3 years ago, before the invasion. We had these discussions several days before the invasion started, and the discussion was about what would be the point when we will actually decide to get our documents and most important belongings and leave the place with the thought that we would never come back. And we got back to the same thinking, like, what is the point? What should happen that we just get together and go to the west of Ukraine, closer to the border, and just. And one of the thoughts would be that obviously Zelensky is a pain in the neck of Putler, and now a pain in the neck of Trump as well.
Mm-hmm.
So he has been. There have been dozens of attempts to assassinate him, and my thinking is that Putler's FSB is probably intensifying these efforts now, while they're feeling that it's also in the interests of Trump's administration. So if this happens, this is a signal for us that we just have to go, because if Zelensky is somebody who cannot be replaced, we cannot do elections. The Speaker of the Parliament, who will be kind of a successor in case the president is gone, is kind of weak in terms of being a political figure close to Zelensky. So that's going to be a very, very difficult time, and we just have to take this signal as a signal to go closer to the west.
I remember that conversation that we had a couple of years ago, where I'm like, "What are you going to do?" It was shortly after it started, and you're like, we're not sure. We might have to move. You were kind of nomadic, I think, for a few months too, right? You moved out of the city into a different part of the country, and you kind of came back, and so much has changed where, you hear about Lend-Lease being a thing, and then that happens in Ukraine, and it buoys the hopes of the people. And then you hear about maybe ascension to NATO, ascension to the EU, that buoys the people. You hear about $2, $3, $4 billion arms packages, the partnerships that you have with every democratic EU country, Canada, the United States, and then Trump happened. And Trump happened literally right when it looked like, and still looks like, Russia will collapse. And you're so close, right? So close. It felt like you were close. Can you describe the whiplash that you had watching, not just Trump get into the White House and his doublespeak, but again, take me through what you thought of the Oval Office meeting with Zelensky?
Oh, That is actually we were having a dinner, and I was looking at the news, and my wife said, "Oh, stop doing this. Let's just have dinner." I said, "Okay, okay." And then half an hour later, she approached me and said, "Did you hear what happened?" I'm like, "What?" They argued, and Trump kicked Zelensky out of White House. And of course, I went to the news, and I was like completely mad and disappointed. I don't know, pissed out with what happened. But of course, I am on our president's side, even though I'm not his supporter. I didn't vote for him. In fact, I think that in the next elections, he shouldn't even he shouldn't even go to be a president for the next term. But here I stand with my president with full heart, because it looks like he is the only one who could actually honestly tell what he's thinking right there in the Oval Office, when Macron was coming and trying to delicately and politely, explain to Trump that he should stand with Ukraine, and then Prime Minister of the UK also
Yeah,
came,
Keir
and he was like,
Starmer. Keir Starmer's like,
"Yes,
hey, we got to put
yes,
some stuff in Ukraine, and Donald Trump's like, that's enough. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
yeah."
And
Yeah.
everything.
And,
Yeah.
and Zelensky was like a real man. He said what was he was thinking about. I mean, and of course it could look rude, but even the fact that he was wearing this uniform, and we both know that that was one of the points that made Trump very angry, that he was not wearing official
A suit.
suit.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, because he's standing with our army, with our military guys. He's thinking about them, how he will look in their eyes and say that he agreed to everything that Trump said. I mean, yeah, that's
Yeah.
hard.
Yeah. Well, it would be very difficult. I mean, you look at what the United States has meant to that part of the world over the past 3 years, and to watch it change, and not just change a little bit, but to watch, your president get eviscerated, and really, um, not just even talked down to, but treated so poorly by two guys who are way out of their depth and even understanding what he's going through, or what's really even going on in that part of the world. Like, they don't know, and it was funny because there was a point where Zelensky, and I thought it was so awesome. He's like, have you been to Ukraine? Have you been? Have you seen our problems? And JD Vance was like, I've been, and then he stopped because he was also almost, he was so close to lying. He was like, and keep in mind, this is a guy that wrote a book, and in the book he talked about how he and his friends used to hump couches all the time. No word of a lie. So VP Couch Humper is he says, I've been, and then he stops. And if I'm Ukrainian and I hear this, I'm like, just not even insulted. I'm sickened by it. For him to go, well, I've seen a lot online. Like, I've seen a
Oh
lot.
no, he said, I've seen a lot of stories,
Yeah.
and for me that was like, this guy is just sitting and watching stories on Instagram or whatever, and he was okay. I've watched stories, yeah, I know what it is like. I mean, what stories?
Yeah. That's that. If I'm you, because you've documented those stories, some of the most horrific stories. How do you combat that? Like, what is a story that he doesn't
In
want to
fact,
hear? Yeah.
I just sent to you, if you can, actually, I can show you the photo. This is the photo of that Zelensky showed to Trump in the White House. Um, this is
Yeah.
Zelensky passing over some photos to Trump on Friday night. Sorry, on Friday in the White House. So I looked at it, and I actually know this guy. This is the guy I know. This one was one of the witnesses we interviewed.
You're
So
kidding.
this is a really amazing story. This is the story that JD must have seen, or
What's
must see.
what's the story? Tell me about that guy.
So this guy's name is Oleksiy. He is a kickboxer, a professional kickboxer. In the beginning of the invasion, he went to territorial defense.
Hmm.
That's not an army; it's like paramilitary body that they were given arms to just protect themselves. And then he
Yeah.
was
I'll put this on
arrested.
the screen. This is him, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
He,
Gotcha.
he was arrested in the beginning in March, actually 3 years ago, and he stayed in Russian prisons for 9 months. And his stories are, I mean, that is probably the worst I heard. He stayed in 2 or 3 different prisons in Russia, and what they did, well, they were beating them every day on a regular basis, several times per day, like meals. In the morning they would come, they would take them out into the corridor and beat them for like half an hour or so. Then in the daytime they would do the same. In the evening again, they would use hunger to them. So they basically gave him so little food that this guy actually lost. I think he was weighing like 90 kilograms, and he lost like 30 or 40 kilograms. So, and this is the photo showing him in the prison and after. So he was very, very slim. So at some point, and it was very, very cold in the cells where they were staying. So he took a sheet, the linen, and he covered himself with the sheet just to keep himself warm and not die from the cold. Once he was so hungry that he actually decided to catch a rat and eat it.
Hmm.
And he actually did it.
Hmm.
And and there's so many other things that he experienced and he survived. And when I was listening to him, and he is such a light and bright guy. He's just speaking about it with a smile. He even wrote a book about his experiences, and he's now traveling around the world. He visited Switzerland recently just to speak about his experience, so that the world knows.
Hmm. Well, that's guarantee JD Vance didn't hear that story, right? Or any of the other
Right.
stories that you've covered for the International Criminal Court. The hubris, that I watched, and then watching Zelensky respond that way. And I think anybody with a brain, anybody that has the ability to reason, that can read, that isn't, captured by the MAGA cult, or somebody that has a decent understanding of what humanity's all about. Watch that interview, and two things happened. And I'd love to know what happened in Ukraine, because in Canada that steeled our resolve. Like that made me so proud of Vladimir Zelensky. It made me so proud to be Canadian, part of a country that has a full-throated support of your country and your people and that man. But that was a man, right? That was a man sitting there in a den full of other rich American oligarchs, mocking him for not wearing a suit, talking down to him, performatively telling him that he needs to get on his knees and grovel for the support that he's been getting for those people. So I know what it did to me. It made me disgusted to be living above the United States in the apartment above the meth house, number one. And number two, the other thing that I think it did, and I'd love for you to kind of fill me in, or I'd love to know your thoughts from Ukraine, is, whether you like Zelensky or not, it looked like it brought Ukrainians even closer together. It looked like Ukrainians of all stripes, from everything that I read. And I'm all into everything I can read on Ukraine, from the, some of those thermite, some of those thermite drones. Love watching those videos. I'm daily into the videos, daily into understanding what goes on in your country. But from what I've read, it sure looked like his approval rating went through the roof, and the country fell in love with him yet again. Correct me if I'm wrong.
Exactly, exactly. You know, the next day, lots of people were like, uh, and we discussed this in one of previous shows. I remember one post, a guy said, uh, uh, I hate Zelensky. I don't like him as a president, but only we have the right to hate him and not like, not some Trumps, things like this. So yeah, there was quite a big support, and the ratings went up, and yeah, I mean, because what I'm thinking is that when I was trying to imagine myself sitting in this Oval Office in Zelensky's shoes. It is hard, but try to imagine that 3 years ago you could have been killed. You know that some assassins were already in the government quarter, and Zelensky's team, that was in the first day of the invasion, Zelensky's team actually grabbed the weapons, the guns, to protect themselves. They were already prepared for just shooting, and luckily it didn't happen. But so he could have been killed, and now he's in the Oval Office, and here you go again. He's impressed by another world power, um, for no reason.
Mm. Did you see him, by the way, did you see him roll his eyes when Donald Trump was like, no one respects any of the other presidents. Everybody respects me. Did you see Zelensky go like this? Oh. But that's what really pissed Trump off, apparently. Like, it really pissed him off. Really
He
pissed
was
him
very
off.
authentic. He was very authentic in his emotions. I don't know why. I was also watching him closely, and I was like, is he so tired? I mean, Zelensky, is he so tired? Because he's an actor, he could act whatever he wants, but he was not acting. He was just himself.
Mm-hmm. So the fallout from that, let's talk about that real quick. Have you guys felt the pain of it, or is it more psychosomatic at this point, meaning the loss of that U.S. support because Donald Trump is effectively a Russian asset? Like, how do you feel about the cancellation of arms or the pause in arms, and how do you feel, and what's the conversation around not sharing intelligence anymore with the United States?
Oh, of course it's bad. Of course it's bad, and we all wish it had never happened, but it happened, and I kind of use Trump's words now.
Do it.
It's funny, but now we just have to deal with that. And I mean, what are the choices? To kneel before Trump? We didn't kneel before Putin. Kneel before Trump. I mean, we would lose again.
Yeah.
I mean, we are again in the situation where we can lose the entire country and nation, because we really don't understand what is going on in his head. We don't know. He doesn't say. They have some talks, some weird talks with the Russians. I mean, the expectations are really deep. So we don't know what will happen. I mean, it's hard,
Yeah.
my friend.
I know, buddy, and I see it. And every time I get a piece of information, or every time a news story comes out, my heart sinks when it comes to, U.S. support for Ukraine evaporating in a month and 40 days. I mean, he's destroying that country, and he wants to come after ours, and we'll get to that in just a second. But are you encouraged by the European Union wrapping its arms around Ukraine over the past few days? I know that they've had several meetings. Would love to get your thoughts on the $150 billion defense package that's coming into Ukraine almost immediately, and then the $800 billion rearmament package for all the different EU countries without Hungary. By the way, they're going to lose their right to vote on the EU, so that's really nice. But I would love your thoughts. I mean, because the shift in paradigm when it comes to Europe taking care of Europe, right? I don't think that's a bad thing. And I think there's always, in chaos, there's always opportunity. So, we feel the same way here in Canada. We're on a big rearmament movement. We're trying to get into bed with the European Union in many ways, whether it comes to security guarantees or sharing intelligence and trying to not just support Ukraine, but also trying to come together with like-minded EU countries. So I would love your thoughts, because I thought that was a spectacular announcement the other day that the head of the EU, Ursula, I can't remember her last name, when she said, "Hey, listen, the time is now for all of Europe to stand against Russia, to stand for Ukraine, and we are going to max out our financial possibilities to do so." So I'd love your thoughts on that if I can.
Well, of course, those news are kind of inspiring, but honestly, really hard to believe. If we take a look at all the 3 years and compare what was said, what was promised, and what was actually given by everybody, including the U.S., it was just complete differences, like a big gap between what promised and then it takes time, it takes effort. Some of the things that were promised 3 years ago have not been delivered yet. I mean, Europe has to get together. My thinking is that I'm just a citizen, of course, but we got to forget about NATO and EU and just come up with our own alliance where Ukraine will have the leading role. And get together other countries. We are actually the largest army in Europe.
Yeah,
our army is larger than several countries, European Union countries combined.
Don't you have 880,000 soldiers right now, I believe, if I'm not mistaken?
Up to 1 million, yeah.
Up to 1 million.
Yeah, but we can be the leading part. And back to your question about how we feel. Of course, we and everybody says that without the US, it will be really hard, if possible at all. But I just read some analysis from a military guy yesterday that up to 80% of the war these days is done by drones. And it is a dramatic change within the past year. So a year ago, it was completely different. And Ukraine is the world leader in drone production these days. So we have lots of cheap drones. Some of the drones are as cheap as $700. Yeah, $700. They are attacking some war military facilities deep in Russia's territory. And this is like a big capability that we have. Of course, if we lose U.S. support, especially intelligence is very important for deep strikes, and the air defense, because Russia. Since September last year, for the past September, November, December, January, February, for the past 5 months, they have been attacking us almost daily. And it's like 30, 40, 50, 100. The record was 268 drones every night. So that was not the case, or had not been the case before September last year. It's like, I think they have this massive production of the drones, and they have lots of them. So every morning when we wake up, it's like, okay, another 100 drones last night. A year ago, it was like 10, 20 drones. That was, and now 100. And yesterday, our intelligence said that Russia is planning to increase it several times, up to 500 drones per night. So the war is into drones now. So if we do not have air defense, we will be really, really in a deep shit.
Yeah, I'd say, and that's something that has been progressively getting better and better. The drone reports that you get in the morning, you'll hear stories like 80 drones were sent into Ukraine. Ukraine shot down 64 of them. You know what I mean? And some crashed because they're Russian and Iranian made. So a lot of them crashed into their own buildings too. Love those videos. But to your point, the drone warfare, and I read an interesting stat. I believe Ukraine produced this year over 1 million drones for combat.
I think more than that.
A little more, but next year, apparently in 2025, this year, scheduled to produce something like 2.5 to 3 million drones. And not just a leader in the space, innovators in the space, to the point where it is a $35 billion market cap for Ukraine. And not only are you teaching the world, and to your point, 85% of Russian casualties have been caused by drones. Like, that's the whole Churchill, I don't know what we're going to fight them with, bottles. It's like Ukrainians just went, let's go get some drones and drop some shit and just see what happens. But what, to the point now where Canada is looking at the development of a drone program based on what Ukraine is doing. Because as you know, Mr. Trump, aside from wanting to invade Greenland, wanting to take Greenland by force, is now talking about taking Canada by force, which, if I remember like 2-3 years ago when you and I are on this call and you said to me, we're on a podcast. Do you remember what you said to me? Can you imagine the United States attacking you? How would you feel? Well, guess what? Not great.
Here we go.
It's amazing because, and I said this, I wrote a piece on this. I'm like, Canada's the new Ukraine. And it took me months to ramp up to that, by the way.
I just I'm wondering if Trump was listening to our podcast and was like, that's a good idea. Let's do it.
Let's invade. But but everything that he's doing is a pretext to war, right? Like the tariffs, they're basically sanctions. They don't exist for a reason. He's lying about, Canada shoving billions of pounds of fentanyl into the United States. It never happens, never has. Yeah, we're not killing Americans. We're feeding Americans 90% of their potash for their agriculture. They get from us 52% of their oil. They get from us all the minerals for refining. They get from us. I mean, we're not sharing our fucking eggs with them anymore. I'll tell you that. But to your point, and I know you and I haven't kind of caught up with this, and I didn't want to sound disingenuous when I said Canada's the new Ukraine. I feel, how it was unbelievable when you woke up that morning and you heard jets going over your apartment and helicopters going over your apartment, and fuck, the invasion's on. This is just absolutely incredible. I can't believe this is even happening. I'm at that point prior to you where you're on high alert and you're like, I mean, it might happen. We might get invaded by the United States of America. So, I mean, it's got to be weird for you, right? Like looking at us going, oh my God, they might get invaded too.
Yeah. That's so crazy and so weird that we even talk about that.
Right.
Yeah. Unbelievable.
Yeah, I don't know what's going to happen. All I know is that I don't have any guns, so I'm the first. I'm that guy that always chooses like the least paths of resistance. But it's funny because what it does is it conjures up. And you said something to me last year or the year before, where you're like, prior to the war breaking out, you were suffering from low mood, maybe some depression, right? And 3 to 6 months into this, and as soon as it started, it disappeared because you had something to focus on. You had a job to do. And I get that today. Over the past, I would say 2 months, I have been ramping up content, trying to warn people about what's going on. Been ramping, as you can see online, ramping up content supporting Ukraine because I know how important Ukraine is to whatever happens here. Like we're seeing that now. Lots of people used to say this all the time, Alex, where they'd say, oh, that's happening over there. And we would say it all the time. No, if it happens over there and it's successful, the next place it happens is going to be the next country and the next country, the next country. And that all it would take is for a Donald Trump presidency again, for him to engage in the idea that he could expand his territory like Putin's trying to expand his. And it's legitimately not just a conversation. He, in the State of the Union last night, he's like, we're going to take Greenland. We don't even give a shit. Literally on national television.
Yeah. To your point, and back to the question about what I think about Europe and Europe trying to get together $800 billion. I think I was thinking about, I think a year ago, I just thought randomly that if Putin takes Ukraine, what he will do next is he will mobilize Ukrainians, get the weapons that we have from the West, and send all of it further. So it's so easy to do
What do you mean send it
because
all further? Like explain that.
he'll just get the Ukrainians conscripts and push them further to Poland, Moldova, Romania, Bulgaria, wherever. He doesn't care. The only way for him to survive is the war. That's something that I heard about I think 10 or 15 years ago. I didn't believe at that point. I was like, what? Somebody said that Putin inevitably will come to a war because this is something that the only thing that will keep his power. He will never stop. The war will be always until he's leaving. And this is a thought that struck me at that point. I didn't even share this thought with my wife, and then I started seeing this thought randomly in news when politics were discussing something, and this thought was like, okay, this is a possibility that Putin will use Ukrainians to actually invade other countries. And Europe now realized that without the US support, this is becoming a dim reality. So they, of course, they just have to. This is their survival. This is their existence. They just have to pull together and help us. I don't know if it makes sense.
Yeah, it totally does. It's got to kind of piss you off, in a sense that, they only started to take it really seriously when, there's the possibility that, Trump might help Putin and they're not there, that someone else is going to have to carry the mail or it's them next, as opposed to, shoving as much into Ukraine as they could have prior to what Trump did. That's got to be unsettling or piss you off a little bit.
Yeah, this is the biggest. We see the difference between the dictatorships and democracy. Democracy gets the social payments and invests them into social benefits. And it just happened that the US was kind of covering Europe with their military force, and we know that 70% of NATO is the US, or NATO is actually US.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, without the US, NATO would not even exist. And Europe was like, okay, enjoying this shield over them, and they were enjoying good social benefits for the people. In order to start financing military, they have to decrease social spendings, which will hit their electorate. I mean, those who their voters, which will hit them. I mean, dictatorships don't care about anything. Putin doesn't care. This North Korean guy doesn't care. They sent North Korean troops to Ukraine, and after a month, they lost they sent 11,000 people. 3,000 of them were either killed or injured, and then they withdrew. But
they left. I didn't know that.
Yeah, they left. Yeah, they left. But our intelligence is saying that they will get a couple thousand more and send them again. But they don't care about it. Absolutely, they don't care about these people. They actually lied to them. They said that they are going to fight against South Koreans,
and they ended up in Ukraine. Can you imagine that?
Yeah, like,
are you serious?
Why do South Koreans look like Ukrainians?
Man, South Koreans look different than North Koreans.
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, that's terrible, but it's so funny. Right?
Yeah.
That is unbelievable. Yeah, because I had heard, obviously, you've seen reports and then the videos that make me laugh the hardest, which again, call me an asshole, I don't really care, are the ones where you see these poor North Koreans running across a field, just getting picked off one by one. Boom, 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 from a drone, dropping something within 5 feet of somebody. Boom, boom. And then the reports that come out about these poor North Koreans who were sold a bill of goods. I heard stories that they're like, we're going to go train in Russia. You guys are going to go train with the Russians. And they literally get pushed to the front lines in front of Russians. They're like, hey, you go out there and do this. So I kind of feel sorry for them, but at the same time, it's bizarre. It's bizarre when you think about that aspect of this war. And then it's even weirder when you think about the fact, I was thinking about this the other day, they're allowed to bring Chinese people, North Koreans, they're allowed to get other equipment, which obviously, Ukraine is getting equipment from around the world. But, there are no other boots on the ground other than Ukrainian boots on the ground for Ukraine.
Right.
But somehow Russia's able to go and conscript, people from other countries. I fucking think it's hilarious that North Koreans are like, whoa, 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 we're out. Anyway, but it's got to be encouraging though to hear stories or to hear guys like Keir Starmer or Macron or even Canada. Trudeau said it the other day, have not ruled out putting boots on the ground. Is that something Ukrainians would be okay with?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
In fact, I am absolutely confident that without international peace troops,
Mhm.
there cannot be any peace. We need some kind of. This is probably the best guarantee when we have foreign troops here on the ground, and in case he invades, these troops are also engaged into the war, and then the other countries will just have to get engaged with their direct support.
Mhm.
I mean, this is so important. I'm so thankful to Macron that he started. Remember, about a year ago, he was like, "Oh, let's discuss this," and everybody was like, "No, no, no, no way, no way, just forget about it." And then a few months later, Macron was actually there was Keir Starmer of the UK who was the first to come out and say, "We are going to send troops to Ukraine after the peace deal."
Mm.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, Keir Starmer said it. Macron's been saying it for quite some time, and I was gobsmacked that Trudeau said it because he's on his way out on the 9th. Hopefully, better guy comes in. But I was shocked by it, and to that point, it's been 3 years. Um, is is there a desire, because gets lost in the conversation. Everybody's like, well, if you support Ukraine, that means you're a warmonger. You want this thing to last. I'm like, you've missed the idea here that Russia attacked Ukraine. They're in Ukraine. This war is not happening in no man's land. It's not happening in Russia and Ukraine. It is in Ukraine. And these people have been in Ukraine for 3 years, and the murdering and the kidnapping and the genocide continues, and it will continue until they stop. Ukrainians are just defending their country. They're not attacking anybody. So when you think about that peace plan, and I know there's a desire to not give up anything after this invasion, but are Ukrainians becoming a little more comfortable with the idea that you might have to give up? Or is it, hey, we're going to, there is no peace plan that includes the eastern part of Ukraine and Crimea?
That's a perfect question. And when I heard Elon Musk saying like, "Oh, you don't want peace," I got so furious. I told my wife, I would look at Elon Musk if a murderer comes to his house, destroys half of his house, rapes his wife, kills his children, and then he comes to him and says, "Let's make peace." That's like my mother and father, my in-laws apartment stays in the occupied territory. Uh, of course, they want to return there. This is their property. They want to live there. They love this place. In fact, they are not comfortable living here in Kiev now because this is not their home. They are used to their home. They live there for like 30 or 40 years. Why would they abandon this place? This is their place. I mean, of course, if you don't have property, if you will go like, okay, whatever. But this is people's lives, people's homes. Why would we give it away? And I always follow what Zelensky is saying. He constantly says that we are not agreeing on giving away the land. We can, for the peace negotiations, we can just avoid discussing it for the time being, and even probably agree that we will not use military force to deoccupy those lands. But we are not agreeing that this is not our land. We will not agree to that.
So there's still in the average Ukrainian's mind, there's no peace deal that includes Russia keeping occupied territory.
Of course, there's lots of Ukrainians. I don't know how many, but the current the current polls are showing that more Ukrainians are kind of ready to agree to stop where we are now. You know, but again, those who do not have property, they would go like, oh, okay, whatever. I don't care. I do care because this is my in-laws' home.
Yeah, yeah.
You know,
It's your lineage. It's where you're from. It's culture. It's, all parts of Ukraine are not the same, right? It's like being told you got to leave your house in Quebec where everybody speaks French and you're really comfortable and your family's family was from there. And then you got to move because someone is militarily occupying that little part of your community. And you're told that you can't go back because it now belongs to them. I understand that. I understand that because I feel that. I think a lot of people do. And I think that's going to be one of those sticking points. And I wonder how, listen, I don't understand the area, the geography, the topography, what's at stake. But, I understand that hundreds of thousands of Ukrainians have been injured or killed fighting to get that back since 2014, right? It's not in the past 3 years. It's been since 2014. So that leaves me with a question in my mind is like, is this going to be a sticking point for Zelensky? Because he sent a letter. I don't know if you saw that. He sent a letter to Trump basically saying, I regret what happened in the Oval Office. Didn't apologize, which is great. He's like, I regret what happened in the Oval Office. I am ready for a peace deal. But Ukraine has to be at the table for that peace deal, do they not? Having someone else decide your fate is fucking not cool.
Absolutely. And looks like Trump wants to make agreement with Putin, and then just put this agreement for Zelensky to sign. And this is not what we will agree.
No matter what.
No matter what, yeah. And this is, I think, what the feeling and the thoughts that Zelensky had when he entered the White House last Friday. That's why it happened.
Yeah,
because we didn't have any signals from the White House. From what I understand, because Zelensky was publicly saying that we don't understand what is going on. What is the plan? They're not sharing with us. They are not sharing with us anything. We don't know.
It looked like it was a setup too, didn't it?
I don't know. Oh, maybe. I feel like it just happened. It happened.
Well, all I know is that after I watched that, I fell in love with Vladimir Zelensky. I was like,
yeah,
that's a real dude. Like, can you imagine the stress and the pressure in that moment?
Yeah, I thought that I immediately thought that it probably the first time never happened in the Oval Office before.
No,
ever, and in the world politics, like such an argument public. And did you see the polls that CNN did and other media, reputable media?
Which ones?
Most of them were like, well, of course they are Democratic. That probably explains everything, but most of them were like, well, that's Zelensky is right.
Oh, all of them were. Yeah. No, it became, listen, if it damaged anybody, If that meeting damaged anybody, it absolutely outed Donald Trump. This is the narrative in North America. Specifically, I just finished a podcast with an American podcaster named Pete Dominic, great guy. It specifically outed Donald Trump and his administration as fully captured by the Russian president. It fully outed him as an asset. Whether it was the heel turn, whether it's the fact that he doesn't say anything negative about Putin in that meeting at all, right? Or he tries to protect Putin in that meeting, which is fucking unbelievable to me. But it laid out the idea really clearly, I think, for a lot of people, that Donald Trump is as compromised a leader as there is in the world, and he's compromised by Russia, because that wasn't just disrespectful, right? That was a lie. What he repeated about Ukraine, talking about not wanting peace, how he tried to force that man who's been trying to keep his people alive for 3 years and trying to protect his country for 3 years to grovel at his feet in the White House to thank him profusely, even though up until that point had thanked the United States at least 94 different times publicly that we know of, vociferously. And so when we watched that further separated probably 300 million Americans from the idea that Donald Trump was not captured by Russians, because he is. And it was really funny because shortly before that, I don't know if you've read the KGB stuff about him being Agent Krasnov. Have you heard this?
Yeah.
And all these receipts came out, and you stack all those things together, and you have a senator yesterday literally in a hearing go, is our president a Russian asset? Because he did this, and this. And that has never happened before. No one's ever literally sat in front of someone in a judiciary hearing and asked if the president was captured by Russia. And it's not just an ongoing conversation about him. It's an ongoing conversation about that shithead you mentioned earlier, Elon Musk. Is who's talking to who, who's got compromat on who. And if you look back at the KGB, did you read the KGB stuff about Krasnov? Did you read some of it? Fascinating.
I just heard
it. Since 1978, he's been farmed, cultivated as a Russian asset. Since 1978. First visit in 86. Apparently, they flooded his hotel room with women, because that's what Russia does, right? Take a bunch of pictures, they get all the information that they have, and then they force him to launder money. Something like 30 or 40% of the condominiums at Trump Tower, this is really funny, were owned by Russians over the past 40 years. And most of those Russians paid 20, 30, 40, 50% above market value for those condominiums. He sold, there's a guy named Dmitry Roblev, I believe his name is, who was involved in one of the meetings in Saudi Arabia with Marco Rubio and Lavrov in that fucking despicable display that we saw of groveling again at Russia's feet. Russia, by the way, still on the verge of collapse. Don't understand why they're doing it. But he purchased Trump's Palm Beach house for 100% more than he paid for it 3 years earlier. Paid $40 million, sold it for $95 million. He's one of Putin's inner circle guys. So to not, I mean, it's not comforting for me to tell you this stuff, but that's the kind of stuff that everybody's leaning on now and talking about now openly for the first time. And it all happened really because of the contention between Zelensky and Trump.
Yeah, the question is, when I first learned about it, I didn't know the details, but I just heard about Krasnov and stuff. But I was like, okay, what are we gonna do with it? I mean, not even we, but what are the Americans going to do with that?
Nothing. He's the president.
Yeah.
He's a Manchurian candidate. Like, there's no other explanation other than he is a Russian asset. Like, and I mean, you sound like a conspiracy theorist saying it too, Alex, right? Like, I feel like
which I don't like, but I mean, I hate conspiracy theories, but even if this is even partially true, then I just see no way out for us.
Hopefully there is. Hopefully it's the EU. Hopefully it's Canada. And depending on what happens, you can come live with me. I got 3 bedrooms.
Thank you, my friend. You will not enjoy it.
Do your kids cry? If they do,
Oh, wow.
maybe not.
they that's not the word. They scream. I don't know. Oh, that's sometimes it's a hell. It feels like it's a hell. You're like, what?
Oh,
What?
you have two
Trump?
kids under
Trump
the age of
argument? Yeah,
three.
I have two kids, 3-year-old and 7 months, and it's like, oh, well, that's not an argument. Here is an argument.
Yeah, yeah. Makes everything easier, right? When you got two kids under three, and then you come home from a day that you have to go and work, and then you document something, and you're under attack, and your kids are like, she stole my tractor, and you're like, oh my god, it's not a problem.
Oh yeah.
Um, Listen, dude, thank you for taking some time with me today. I really appreciate it.
Oh, thank you so much, Dean. I really love being with you, and it's soothing. It's it's a kind of a therapy for me. That's something that you mentioned in the beginning. This Those podcasts helped me a lot in the beginning. I really felt a lot better after talking to you guys, and yeah, so I really appreciate, and I feel this closeness, even though we never saw each other in person.
Mm.
But I feel like we are like very, very good, warm friends.
We are. We are. I think about you daily. You know, it's funny. Anytime I see anything out of that end of the world, or any of the news around Ukraine, the first thing in my thought is Alex. Obviously, the first thing in my mind is your family and you. And if I know one thing, that war that was supposed to last 3 days, which is going on 3 years, where you've killed double the amount of people they've taken from you, right? That every bottle, every stick, every piece of electronics, every piece of C4, every grenade that's jimmy rigged to a drone, you not only have shown the world what a nation of willing people can do, you've shown the world how important being free people is and how powerful that is. And I don't think, I know good things are going to happen. I hope good things are going to happen when it comes to the United States involvement. But I think you've shown the world that you don't need the United States. You don't need big brothers or big sisters. You need cooperation, and you need people to partner with you, real countries, real individuals, to let you lead your way out of this, to let you fight your way out of this, to support you so you can do so. Not to be big brother, not to come in and tell everybody that they're more important than you, and without them, you wouldn't be able to do this. You have done this on your own. I do not question the will of the Ukrainian people. I do not question that in the end, Ukraine will be a free country. I do not question the loyalty of the Ukrainian people to the democratic process. One thing that I do question is what Russia is going to look like when you're done with them.
That's a good one.
That's what I question, because words and works, right? Putin can talk about this, Trump can talk about that. You don't talk about anything. You just go out there and do it, and you're winning, and you're still on the verge of winning. So I hope the rhetoric doesn't sink in too much, because you still have the will of the free world behind you. The United States, Trump's America, is a pariah state now. Everybody knows they've been unmasked. The emperor has no clothes, just a bunch of dumb fascists with a bunch of shiny equipment. And I don't see a world where you're not free people. And I think that, that's funny. You talk about soothing. I think that some of the stress that I've seen from the United States coming into Canada, I always think back to the conversations that you and I had when we first started to talk, right? Where you said, we will fight, we will win. We will fight, we will win. We will fight, we will win. And there's different ways to do it, but you have been the North Star. Your country, your people, you have been that North Star to the world. And we are fully behind you. And you know that I am as well. So thank you very, very much for taking a minute to catch up with me today. I really appreciate it. And as always, Slava Ukraine.
Heroям slava, my friend. That was very inspiring. Thank you.
Oh, buddy. Yeah. We will get together and have that pint. I promise you that.
Sure.
Have a great day, pal. I'll talk to you soon.
Take care.
Take care. Alex Daybrakov from BUCHA, Ukraine. Google BUCHA. Invasion BUCHA. Google that. Have a look at some pictures. That's where he is. 3 years after Russia decimated that part of the world, literally discriminately murdering people, his friends. Dude's like, fuck it, I'm moving back. And I'm going to rebuild this house that those greasy orcs tried to take from us. There you go. Perspective from a Ukrainian in Ukraine. Not a politician, not a newspaper, not a social media post. A human being who has been there since day one, who's had Russians steal the battery out of his car. Well, try. They failed because he drives a Beamer. A man who's had to move his family around to keep him safe. A man who's documented thousands of war crimes. That's who you just heard from. You didn't hear from a State Department spokesperson. You didn't hear from that Caroline Leavitt. You didn't hear from Trump. You didn't hear from J.D. Vance. You didn't hear from Fox News. You didn't hear from CNN. You didn't hear from MSNBC. You didn't hear from any spin doctor. You heard from a Ukrainian in the thick of it in Ukraine about the real. Follow Alex on Facebook. He posts there all the time. Alex Daybrakov is his name. You can get him at Daybrakov on Twitter as well. Thanks, Alex. And thank you for taking some time with us. Really appreciate it. Don't forget everything we do. YouTube, you can watch this show. You can actually see it physically if you're listening to this on Spotify or Apple. You can physically watch this on YouTube, Dean Blundell Show or Crier Media. You can also join us on Substack, Dean Blundell on Substack. Would really appreciate it. Started doing a Fast Five. Actually, it's called the 5 Stack, which is 5 great stories, less than half an hour with Zev Shalev, legendary producer for the CBS Today Show, and or CBS Morning Show. And on top of that, you can get everything we do at crier.ca. So Substack, go and apply. Paid subscribers get all kinds of freebies. If you can join us on Substack, it'd be great. $5 a month, big deal. You can start at like 10, 15, 20 if you want. I'm like, that's 5 is fine. I don't need your money. Just want you to watch, want you to listen, want you to pay attention. Lots of different articles. Turns out to be like 5 cents an article, which is good news because we don't lie. And we don't gaslight. We just kind of give you the deal for people who are accountable. And you can get all our podcasts on Apple and Spotify. Anyway, have a great day. Thanks to our friends at Field Trip Health for making this possible. Listen, they've helped my friends. They've helped me. They can help you. Fieldtriphealth.ca. Fieldtriphealth.ca. Listen, are you like me? Do you suffer from PTSD, anxiety, depression? Do you take your mental health seriously? Well, so do the people at fieldtriphealth.ca. They offer a unique approach to at-home ketamine therapy too. Yes, they do. Not only can you contact them in different provinces like Ontario, British Columbia, Saskatchewan, Quebec, Montreal. They've got clinics. Ontario, they've got a bunch. Montreal, Vancouver, Regina, they got one. They've also got an at-home therapy program, personalized care tailored for your specific need, ensuring safe and supportive environment with a commitment to integrating therapy and mental health support. They aim to deliver the very best outcome for their clients. And why do they do it at home? Because sometimes you just can't get to a clinic. Sometimes it's difficult. You want to unwrap trauma in a safe environment. Sometimes for people, that's just at home. But this is what ketamine assisted therapy is. It is a little bit of ketamine, 2 hours of really awesome therapy where you unwrap trauma. You deal with things that you've had a hard time dealing with your whole life that have created this calluses, that have put you in neutral, that put a cage over your emotions and your joy. And the experience that you have through those therapeutic sessions absolutely change the way you think. You're able to help yourself with the guide who's counseling you to help you as well. Sometimes people that do this, they get relief in like an hour. Sometimes that relief lasts for months. There are no SSRIs, meaning no antidepressants. And antidepressants work. They are part of a scheduled treatment. They are your first line of defense. Field Trip is not, but Field Trip is for people who have treatment-resistant depression, treatment-resistant anxiety, and PTSD. people who just can't get past the idea that they have to deal with trauma. We all have it. Happens every day, adds up over time, and then you find yourself unwilling to compete in your life. My friends at Field Trip have given thousands of people their lives back, their joy back, their families back, and they want to help you too. Fieldtriphealth.ca. Check them out today. Book your discovery call online. Super easy. You book a free discovery call to see if you're a candidate for your at-home therapy or in-studio therapy. You can also get a medical consultation that's absolutely free of charge with a nurse practitioner, and then they put you to work, getting busy, getting better. And I'm telling you right now, it is game-changing, specifically for people that have treatment-resistant depression. 80% of those people have a response rate as opposed to maybe 20 on your fourth schedule of SSRIs. Drug addiction, alcohol addiction, 86% of respondents remained abstinent dealing with their alcohol and drug addiction. 86%. Do you know how enormous that is? It's huge. And if you want to set yourself free, you're going to go and call my friends. Get better faster, get better, stay better longer. Go to fieldtriphealth.ca for more details. Thanks, everybody, for being part of the show. Really appreciate it. Rate, subscribe, all that other stuff, wherever you can. Have a great day. We'll see you tomorrow. Bye.